like I arguably was doing better, 6 years ago even than I may have in the last, year and a half,
Yeah.
right? Which on its face like can sound like a scary thing to say, but I'm very much okay with it because I feel like what I'm doing at my shows now is like I really love it. Makes it beneficial if that makes sense.
No, I totally understand that. I think it's actually a crutch if you hang on to your routines like too rigidly in
Mhm.
terms of like not being able to adjust because I know like I came into your dressing room
Yeah.
like right before your
Yeah, yeah,
show
yeah,
the
yeah.
other day and I was like I was self-conscious about, I was a little bit like I know you do I got to go cuz I want you to
Right.
get it's like a few minutes before you have to go on and but like if somebody were to distract you like right before, take up your
Mhm.
time, throw you out of your rhythm, it sounds like then you can still be fine. It's not gonna like mess you up mentally.
Right.
Like fuck, now I didn't do that, and the show's gonna be bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try not to get in my head about whether the show will be good or bad or like, how's the audience feeling with, whoever's opening or whoever's going before me,
Yeah,
and just try to access that energy of like, hey, it's gonna be what's gonna be. No matter what happens before, I'm gonna go out there regardless, and I'm gonna do the thing that I'm gonna do, and
yeah.
it's gonna go the way it's gonna go.
Probably it takes some experience to get to that point, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of I started doing stand up when I was like 18, like over the summer back from college.
Oh wow.
So like starting off then
Yeah, no
and
worries.
now I'm 32.
Yeah,
So that's, 14 years. I've had a lot of bad nights where like things didn't go well for me.
yeah,
And then they didn't go well for me when I was like much younger and didn't have any of the tools that I have now to deal with the not so nice feelings I felt when I had a really bad set or, or whatever it may be.
yeah,
So I think like all those reps sort of built the muscle to be able to sort of deal with the emotional side of doing stand up, right? The
yeah,
anticipation, the during, the ability to sort of like navigate the moment when you're on stage, and then also dealing with the aftermath of like how it felt, how the set felt.
right,
It's like it's a lot of feelings.
right.
That's that's
Absolutely. I mean, you're exposing yourself. Um, you're putting yourself out there, and
yeah.
if it doesn't go, I imagine you have the greatest, really a lot of highs and a lot of lows.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes I mean it's always I mean every comic will tell you this. Like you'll have a set and you'll be like, "That was not good," and then somebody else will be
Yeah,
like, "What are you talking about? That was great." And there's this disconnect sometimes,
yeah,
and sometimes you're zeroing in on one joke or one moment,
hmm
and sometimes you just like didn't have a great day, and that
yeah,
just carried itself over into the set, and you were able to do the job, but you still felt the things that you were feeling,
yeah,
leading into it.
yeah. It is interesting. Like the shows that you think are great are like the best.
Yeah,
Like, are they? If you have
right.
that kind of like, if you're not lost in the moment and like a little uncomfortable at times
Hmm.
and really risking yourself like I feel like that's what people actually want to see. It like is more exciting for people to see, but I imagine when you get into that mode, it probably doesn't feel super comfortable, so you might not be aware if you're like knocking it out of the
Right.
park. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just sort of like
No, no, no. I think that's interesting. I think it's tough, right? Like every time you go on stage, you have a different group of people, generally in a different space. You don't know what all of their days were. You don't know where they're at emotionally. You don't know what they like, what they don't like, what they're connecting with, what they're not connecting with. And I think trying to spend too much time trying to figure that out only sort of paralyzes you in the
mhm.
process.
Mhm.
So I think that the more you can sort of not I find that like when I'm having the most fun
Mhm.
doing stand up is when I'm not putting so much pressure on any one set or any one night.
Yeah.
And I sort of just view it like in the macro of like this one long journey, this one long
Mhm.
marathon, and
Mhm.
like this is just one piece of it.
Right.
And also, I mean, I think about again like over 14 years ago, like how many times did I think my life was over after a show? You know, and I couldn't even tell you about those
Yeah,
nights because
and
they're
here
because
you
I've
are
moved on
again.
because here I am
Yeah.
again, you know, and I
Yeah.
like keep going and um
So it's almost like as you age, it's like it can become more and more fun, you know? I mean, you can
yeah,
enjoy it, you can enjoy the moments more.
I think I think I mean at least for me, I'll say like I think as I've gotten older, I've just done more work in trying to in figuring out what the best way of moving through like a day looks like so that I can just have fun living life.
Yeah.
And then that translates over into doing stand up or into doing anything.
Yeah.
So not necessarily like putting so much pressure um or 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 so essentially just not sorry essentially
No, I hear what you're saying. It's like
not
not
placing so much value.
pressurizing situations and night. Yeah.
We're just
Yeah.
trucking along. We're doing our best. None of this is that important in the
Right,
grand scheme of
right.
things, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So
This
it's
is a
like,
theme this is a young podcast, but this is a theme I keep hearing over and over again from a lot of people that I think are pretty wise, but just the sort of like the end uh point of like don't take yourself too seriously.
yeah.
Don't take yourself too
By
seriously.
the way, I am struggling to open this water bottle right now. I was trying to be all cool. I was like, spin, 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 spin. And then I was just like struggling. I was like, I got it. I'm going to say something.
You know, it's so funny. That is a thing. This is like totally random thought, but my son, early on, it was one of those things like as a dad, when he was young, is like, I can't open the water. I
Yeah.
can't open the top. And I'd always be like, buddy, I'm happy to help you open it, but you got to give it everything you got first.
Mm-hmm.
Like your hand should hurt a little bit. Like you got you know how have you ever opened like tried to open a tomato
Yeah, or like
can
a
or
pickle
something?
jar or
People
like
and
something.
it
Yeah.
won't open, and
Yeah.
it's like you're like, I have to be able to open this. I got to open it. So you like you turn it
I
so
think
hard, and it's like,
yeah, peanut butter jars are the worst because they have, or like those kind, like the plastic tops, because they have that texture that
yeah,
sort of digs into your like palm a little bit.
yeah,
Um,
totally,
yeah, yeah,
totally.
yeah,
There's some. I mean, I can viscerally like if I imagine that feeling of like trying to open
yeah. Mm-hmm.
a jar of something that's too hard to open, and you finally get it. It's like, well, this is what I was saying, and I don't know if this is bad parenting or what, but like I was always like, I didn't want to make him feel bad about it, but I was like trying to always encourage him, like before just giving it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and some people innately have this. Like it's an interesting thing. Like I could see some of his friends, like they'd all be opening their sodas or whatever, and
Yeah.
some of them are just like, rah, like I'm gonna, they're just innately
Yeah.
gonna go there. And my son would innate, and he's great at so many things. I could say nothing bad about him, but love him endlessly. But he would like this is one of those things where I felt like I had to teach him something
Yeah.
because he would try to open it, but he wouldn't try that hard.
Mm.
And then he'd just be like, "Hey, I can't open it. Can
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
somebody open it for me?" So I was always like, "Bud, you gotta. That's you gotta learn how to open that." Um,
That's yeah. Yeah.
it's a side note thing. It's just and then it's in everything that kind of like we end up doing together. Like when in
Uh-huh.
basketball or like whatever
Yeah.
homework he's in, like whenever he comes up against something,
Yeah.
I'm always like, dude, you'll be a master at that when you learn how to open the bottle of
Bottle.
water
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that you
It all
can't
goes back
open.
to
It
just
all
like
goes
the
back
simple
to
things, like
yeah,
coming up against resistance, and then
yeah,
what you do when you come up against resistance sort of helps define you in many ways. Because
yeah,
life is just full of resistance.
yeah,
So
totally.
that makes
I did
sense.
not mean to get off on such a tangent on that,
No,
but
I
you
think
opening but you
it
were
all connects.
yeah,
It
yeah,
all
yeah, fucking thanks.
it all
Um, how about this jet fuel here?
lovely. Third sip in, I'm feeling it.
You
Eyes.
think you think we're gonna drink it all before the end of
Do I
the?
think I'm gonna drink it all? I'm gonna be honest. Probably also there's some once a cup of coffee, if I don't drink it fast enough and it starts going down in
Oh
temp,
yeah.
I start tapping out.
Ah, okay,
I start
okay.
tapping out once if it starts getting like lukewarm,
Yeah.
coldish. Although I
See,
guess maybe I'm just drinking bad coffee because I think good coffee still isn't that the thing? Like good coffee still tastes good microwaved or like not. I don't know.
no, I'm, man. I guess I'm a coffee snob. I don't like the taste of my coffee microwaved. I don't think it tastes right. It doesn't have that same like fresh,
Yeah.
powerful punch. Um, and was it? Yeah, no, I think like, fresh. I don't know, fresh coffee. I lost my train of thought, but I think fresh coffee is is where it's at.
Point is, I'm nervous, and just gonna this is just gonna it's so weird. I still get what I mean? Like we're having a nice conversation, we're a nice place. You're a
Mm-hmm.
very nice person, and
Thanks, man.
it's like no matter what the thing is, I still I still feel the nerve. So you're saying like before, like I still feel this. It's not the same nervousness that I felt in the past, but there's always that little feeling, like in my stomach, like whether I'm about to go on stage or like
Mm-hmm.
even before this podcast, or and it'll
Oh
pop
yeah,
up,
yeah,
and I feel like that's the plastic bottle top,
yeah,
that's the feeling where you're like I could just run away and stop,
yeah,
and I don't have to feel this. But
yeah,
if I can just overcome this feeling, there's going to be something nice on the other side.
right,
And that something nice doesn't always feel good. I mean, I
yeah,
think sometimes it feels uncomfortable, or it feels you feel defeated, or you feel a lot of self-doubt. Like I don't know how I'm going to feel at the end of this podcast episode.
right,
I'll leave this room. Invariably, like undoubtedly, like think about this conversation.
yeah,
Hopefully not too much, because that's not nothing good will come of that.
right.
And hopefully I can just like
It's another
accept
good point
we
there.
had the conversation that we had. It was
Let it go.
lovely. Move on, let it
Yeah,
go, enjoy the rest of the day. Um, but and I think that's yeah, it's interesting because I've had battled anxiety since I was a kid.
yeah,
So it's really weird that this is something that I chose to do, and I've always performed, which doesn't really make sense. Those things sort of butt up, um, and I find that I'm able to I'm able to like silence that voice or lower the volume like in my
mm-hmm,
head the most when I feel like that muscle of overcoming that nervousness that I feel, because it's like, well, if I can do this, then like I can overcome
right,
the anxiety I feel over that like social interaction I had at a party or whatever it is.
totally.
Like that's nothing. That's fine.
It's almost like you do need to build that up though. Like I don't know. I've definitely felt that as well.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of I understand that feeling of anxiety. It could be like starting a podcast and thinking like, what am I? There's so much doubt that creeps in, right?
Totally.
And then the anxiety and it's like this feeling. I don't know how you describe it, but it can prevent you from sleeping. It's like, um, and then for me, it's like the feeling right after you do it, it can be horrible all the way up until,
Yeah.
and it sucks that it's like that because for
Mhm.
things that are important because it, I'm not saying this, podcast is, creating a podcast or doing podcasts is important, but I'm just thinking
No, but
whatever it is.
it
Uh,
is because it's an expression of you. I think
yeah,
like that's the other thing. Like I mean, I it's really I think easy. And earlier I was like, no, this is it's that sort of duality between like none of this is that important and none
yeah,
of this really matters, but then it totally does,
right,
right? Because it's an extension of us and it's an expression of us, and like those
right,
things matter. Like they have to.
right.
Otherwise, like what are we doing? But I think it matters because it's an expression of us, and that's enough. And
Hmm.
because that's enough, all the other stuff that we fear and we're anxious about, right? Whether it's what people are going to think, whether the thing is going to be good, what does good even mean, whatever, those things aren't that important because we've already won by getting over the hump of being like, okay, I'm going to make something that's an expression of me or whatever,
Totally.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it does. I mean, I think from what you say, it's more what you're gaining is more internal. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying? Is like,
totally.
it doesn't really matter that much what you're doing. I mean, hopefully you create something that affects somebody's somebody's life
Right.
positively, whether it's like to make them laugh or that they see something from a perspective that they
Hmm.
didn't before. Like that's all
Yeah.
honorable and valid, right? That's where you can come back to making it logically make sense as to
Hmm.
why you're putting forth the effort, you're doing it. That it's not totally selfish. But in that process, it's like you're going to come up against these fears, these doubts that like you're talking about. And I don't know, I just think that as you do them more, like you're talking about, like getting on stage or continuing to do it, you build up these tools that make it so you can enjoy it more,
Yeah.
you can enjoy the process more, you can manage that. I don't know if that, people talk about anxiety nowadays like like it's like it's unique to them or something. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
know they do and they don't, but it
Yeah.
is, I think it actually is something that all of us
It's universal for sure.
have,
Yeah.
and the less we do something, the less we put ourselves out there, the more we try to protect ourselves, protect our emotions.
Hmm.
And it's not to say we shouldn't from time to time. If we're at a level where like, hey, we need to go back to, kind of base and protect myself and then build up again, if I'm emotionally kind of messed
Yeah.
up or feeling a lot of anxiety. But I think that if the more that we put ourselves out there and go after the things that we've always wanted to try,
Yeah.
like the more tools will build up. Like,
And the more we're going to experience joy and happiness because we're
mm-hmm.
actually living life. It's like the metaphor of the thorn. I read it in. Have you ever read Untethered Soul?
No.
Okay, so it's a great book. Like
Okay.
I bought the book like a year and a half ago, and then it took me probably like 8 months to actually start reading it. And then it's an amazing book. But there's this great metaphor in it, and I don't know where it originally comes from, but I read it in the book, and the idea is that imagine that you have this thorn that, let's just say it's like at the center of your chest,
Mm-hmm.
right? And whenever someone touches it or brushes up against it, right, you experience pain.
Yeah.
So at that point, you have two choices. And the first choice is you sort of move through the world trying to make sure that nobody touches it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You
And
build
then
up like
and you build up guards, right, and
yeah.
space, and then you go like, okay, but then you find someone that you love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this person, they want to hug you, right? But when they hug you, it aggravates the thorn. So then you're like, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay, no worries. I'll build this contraption so that I can still give them a hug, but they won't activate the thorn. But now you have this
Right.
contraption, and then maybe it's tougher to get through doors, or it's making life more complicated. And that is what so many of us do, right? Like that thorn is sort of the pain, the
Yeah.
fear, the anxiety that comes from the experiences that we've had in our life, right?
Yeah.
And we can either try to protect ourselves from
Yeah.
experiencing that pain, so not doing something, not going to that party, not not
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
living life, right? But in the process of trying to protect ourselves from pain, we're creating pain because we're not actually living our lives. And then the
Right.
other option is you take the thorn out,
Yeah.
and then you're good, right? And
if
it's
it
like
were that
if it were that
if
easy,
it were
if
that
it were that
easy.
easy, and I think that's
Yeah.
the doing the reps and having living your life from with that sort of state with that intention baked into the way you go about your
Right.
day. Um, and then you just kind of get a little bit better at when like the fear pops up, the anxiety pops up, whatever those things are, of not pushing them away, not saying like these things aren't real, but just allowing those things to sort of like enter you and move through you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like they're energies that sort of like that move through you. And then you can just go about your day living your life not in that sort of like mode of trying to protect yourself
Yeah.
emotionally, but in the mode of like I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to embrace life, and things are going to come along that may be uncomfortable, but when they do, I'll acknowledge them and I'll allow them to pass through, and I have the confidence that I'll be able to do that. And that's obviously like if you can get to that point, like, oh,
Yeah.
things are great, right? And
Yeah.
I have moments where I'm
It's
able to do that, and I'm like, and
totally.
they feel great, but and it's certainly not a. I'm like so far from being able to like really dial into that, day in day out all the time. But I think like that might be the goal. But if I can at least like a couple times a day
Yeah.
channel that,
Yeah.
oh, it's like
Yeah.
right now. Like I said, like I was feeling some nervousness, some anxiety, some whatever, and then there's problems.
And then I
I'm
gave you
just
jet
And then you gave
black
me jet
coffee.
fuel. Yeah, exactly.
Jet fuel coffee.
And I was like, I'm just gonna say it, and I'll say it, and we'll talk about it,
Hmm.
and I feel better. You know,
Good, man.
whatever.
Good. Hit me with the end of that. You got the thorn was like, um, if you pull the thorn out. Oh, yeah. So like,
Yeah.
I was thinking about when you were saying like people build up all kinds of different guardrails and
Yeah.
structures. It just made me think how much I've experienced that in my own life with people and with myself. Sometimes those guardrails do damage also because a lot of people, like people that are even with someone they love, like they might throw up a guardrail or something that hurts somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even know that it's just a defense mechanism, you know?
Right.
And and that's so like I guess it's like, do you, if you don't get to that point where you're like, you're that higher level, like how does one get to the point where they're actively trying to improve themselves? Like what we're talking about is all well and good, but it's like if you're in the throes of life and you're working and you're, I don't know, you've had a rough go at things. Things aren't necessarily going your way, whatever. How do you continue to sort of improve yourself or try to improve yourself in that way where it's
Yeah.
like you were saying, some days it's good, some days you can, come up with, things
Mm-hmm.
these realizations, these awarenesses, these things to try to make you a little better. Some days you can't. I don't know. It's like it's almost like we need that baked into us from a young age of like
Mm.
just improvement. Like
Yeah.
hey, or the somehow someone encouraging you to like that's all it is like try to improve, you know?
Yeah.
That was a really horrible explanation. One of my sometimes I'm like cannot succinctly say
No,
something
that made
and
perfect sense.
but
I
like I had
totally got what you were saying.
to you.
I'm totally following what you're saying. It makes
Thank you.
perfect sense.
I think a lot of people will be like, "Man, this dude's crazy." But
No, they won't. And you know what? And if they do, you'll never know.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Screw them. Whatever.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. Um,
But yeah, no, I do think like ultimately that sort of attitude of like, yeah, you're never gonna nail some specific idea or thought that's just gonna it's just gonna be perfect and
mhm.
now everything's solved and you know how to deal with everything
Right.
every day for the rest of your life. It's gonna be constant like I'm fuck the anxiety's here again for this specific thing. Do I
Yeah.
just run away from it or do I protect myself? Or do I just keep trying to move through it and maybe I win that day, maybe the next
Right.
day I don't, but there's never gonna be a perfect answer.
No, there's never gonna be a perfect answer. And I think also like, I mean, again, I can only really speak to my experience. But I like to think that like a lot of these things are universal, and there might be some differences, but we all sort of connect in that in that human experience of, you know, I think the days when you're like, great, I dealt with the uncomfortable feeling, whatever that feeling is,
Yeah.
the anxiety, the fear. Um, Although those are connected, right? But I was able to sort of navigate that well. Awesome. But
Hmm.
then on the days when you're not able to, I know when I was much younger would sort of fall into this shame spiral, and I would beat myself up for not doing a good job,
Yeah.
right? And for like essentially succumbing to it, and but now it's sort of when I don't when I don't manage that feeling well, right, and I allow it to win or whatever,
Hmm.
um, just being like, okay, all good, I'll do better tomorrow. The next
Yeah.
time it shows up, I'm gonna let me tell you something. I'm gonna have another chance
Yeah.
to play this game again
Yeah.
because I'm gonna be anxious again. I'm gonna be scared again. I'm
Yeah.
gonna feel this again. So I'll have another chance. It's like a bad
Right.
set. I have a bad set. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get on stage again, so
Yeah.
I'll have a chance to sort of have a good set,
Right.
and come back from that.
Okay, this makes me think of something because I love that, and I think all things like whatever your goals are, business, a venue, comedy career,
Hmm.
theater career, uh, you know, basketball career, whatever. It's always like you have a goal. What is that goal?
Hmm.
and then you start going after it, you're going to get massive resistance.
Yeah.
Like what and like what you're talking about, like letting things go, does that work against? I mean, my question would be, and I don't know the answer to this, is like, are those that succeed at the highest levels, I mean, are they miserable sometimes? Like,
Mm,
is it take that energy of like, you know, frustration or uh, pain or whatever that can like propel you, give you enough of the energy that you need to sort of like get to the next levels, you know?
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I don't know. I wonder. I know when I was young, I certainly bought into this, like into like the tortured
the
artist
like
trope. Yeah, and like
grind
that.
it out.
And I was
Yeah.
just like sad,
Yeah.
and like I was
Yeah.
unhappy, and I was
Yeah.
unhealthy, and um like life wasn't life wasn't very nice.
Yeah.
So for me, I also go like, I'm like, that's the thing is like, I think you can be a perfectly like happy person. Obviously not happy all the time because that's impossible, but like,
Sure.
like be living a good life and feeling fulfilled and still and still be, really good at whatever it is that you're doing. And in
Yeah.
some cases, I think like even better. Or the other side of it is, okay, maybe you're not as great as you would be, but everything else is pretty damn good. So who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, maybe I'm not creating as great of art as I would. Let's just say that were the case. But if the rest of my life sucks
Yeah.
and I'm unhappy, then who cares?
Yeah.
I'd rather like be making stuff that I'm really proud of and I'm having fun making and I'm enjoying putting out there, and maybe I'm not getting the results that I want, but like the process of doing that I'm really digging.
Right.
And then, you know, but because I'm in that space, I'm also able to have like healthy relationships, and I'm able to go out into the world and, do things that I wouldn't do
Yeah.
otherwise, and because I have that mindset.
Right.
But I'm also of the belief that like if you are operating from that place of not brushing up against resistance, right? And just letting whatever you're coming
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
against sort of move through you, that's just going to open up a whole world that wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
otherwise. And then I think there's a really good argument to be made for like that's going to allow you to create or, access something
Mm-hmm.
that will propel you to an even higher level.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
what's right,
I hear you.
but I feel I know that like I've bought into both, and one certainly just
Sure.
feels nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It's like, well, I think I don't know much about this, but I heard somebody say this recently. The difference between operating most of the time under what's the stress hormone? Uh,
Cortisol?
Yeah,
No.
cortisol.
Cortisol?
Operating under
Let me tell you, man,
cortisol.
just pulled that
Nice,
out. Oh,
nice.
that felt good.
Well, it's just yeah,
There we go.
you got it. I think.
I think okay.
I think we might
Okay.
both be wrong.
If
And that
any of us are wrong, let us know in the comment section if
oh
we're
man,
incorrect.
I was doing a podcast with Tom Dreesen, and
Uh-huh.
he was like, "What's that effect called?" And he even said like when like a small thing makes a huge change.
Butterfly effect?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
you got it right.
Cool.
But I responded the Mandela effect.
The Mandela effect, okay.
Which is not the same thing at all.
Different
It's
thing.
like
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
totally different thing. So that was pretty embarrassing. I was like, what do we do? You know,
yeah.
do we put this out? Like, yeah, just put it
Yeah,
out. You
yeah,
know, people, who cares?
yeah.
Um, but yeah. So what were we talking about? I
We were
forget.
talking about cortisol.
Cortisol. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I heard
stress
someone
hormone.
say, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So I heard someone say, it's like operating under most of the time the cortisol or the love hormone, which is like oxytocin. Oxytocin, is that it?
I,
You gonna get this one too?
I don't. I've.
There's a
Yeah.
there's a hormone that gets released when you like, you with a good friend and you
Hmm.
just feel that like, oh man, I love my friend,
Hmm.
or you're with your partner and you feel love, like that. There's an actual hormone that's released, or you could be. When I was talking to this person about this, I was like, yeah, I've been at work sometimes. I'm like,
Serotonin?
no,
No,
I think it's
it's
oxytocin.
oxytocin. Okay.
I think so. It's just a hormone.
Okay.
Can you check that?
Now I want to know.
Oxytocin, is that the love hormone? Um, and I think like when yeah, so you can operate under that where it's
Mhm.
like, and oh yeah, I was saying I felt like there's a moment I had in like our staff meeting. We have like
Yeah.
8 or 9 managers on staff in the den team. And they're just such a great team, right? Like just
Yeah.
unbelievable. And we've been here for a long time, 14 years. So it's like to get to that point where you have this great team where you just feel like they can run this ship. And I don't know, I had this good feeling, and I was just like, man, it's just the feeling of like, I love these people.
Yeah.
But and they were like, yeah, that's oxytocin, I think, unless I'm saying, am I right? Is
Oxytocin.
that
Let's
oxy? Thank you for
go.
looking that up, Q. Yeah. So that was that's all. It's like what you said, made me think of that. It's like you can so that whole grind culture is like, you know, it's about releasing it's cortisol mostly.
Mm.
It's like raw, like pushing through,
Yeah.
like, and I think there's a place for that. There's like
Yeah.
revving yourself up so much where like I need to tackle these obstacles, but I think that you can generate energy that can propel you forward through just good feelings. Like,
Totally.
and that's,
And I think it all comes back to just like what one's philosophy about like what life is about, right?
yeah,
Because obviously, I think, and I know everyone says this, but I think it's really easy to get caught up in feeling that what we do defines who we are, and it very much doesn't. And I think that I mean you have a family, right? Like you
mhm,
have kids, and and you have a wife, and I would imagine that the joy and the fulfillment that you get from the memories that you make with them, from the time that you spend with them, from seeing your kids
mhm,
being babies to being like teenagers now, right? And like and seeing the human beings that they're becoming. Um,
yeah,
that's what it's kind of all about, right? That moment that you have with your staff where you're like,
yeah,
oh, I
yeah,
love
yeah,
these people. Like
yeah,
this started out with like me, right? Wanting to just like put up a play and create opportunities for myself and one employee. And we went out because we just love theater. And that's because you love theater and you
mhm,
wanted, you had this drive that came from a place of love for this art form. And then look what came of it, right?
yeah.
Was
It's
like it's not only
yeah,
like the successful business, but it's also the successful relationships that you've built, the opportunities that you've created for for the people that work here, right? And that extends out into the world. But all of that comes back to like, I mean, I love theater, and I'm
yeah,
not getting the roles I want to get, and like that's really cool.
yeah. Well, what's
Um,
interesting tying into what you were saying, like allowing things, it's like, where the den is at now, this building is like, it's now like, well, it's a comedy club, and
mhm,
I never would have guessed it would
right.
become that, in that at that time, right? It was like I never would have guessed it would have morphed into that direction. Now the comedy is actually that part of the business in our main room is fueling the theater, is allowing the theater
Right.
to continue in the other spaces where we probably wouldn't have survived on its own. But it was about like taking what comes, driving forward in a way where there weren't necessarily the map wasn't necessarily there. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean?
yeah.
It's sort of like allowing what are the opportunities in front of you? Where do you need to adapt and evolve and just keep taking steps forward?
Yeah.
I couldn't have guessed that it would end up where it is, where that it would have evolved into comedy and then into a podcast at some point,
Hmm.
and then who knows where else,
Yeah.
but that's exciting, the unknown,
Mm,
because it feels like a sort of an adventure, an evolution. It's not like there's this clear map.
right.
And I don't know. And that just what you were saying about allowing,
Yeah.
and sort of letting things pass through you, letting them be a part of
Uh
you
huh.
as you move forward is important.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And it's sort of playing into the evolution of who you are through it all,
Sure.
you
And
know?
the discovery,
Yeah.
you get to discover yourself. Um, that's why, it is fascinating, to hear everybody's, journey. Everybody that comes through here to do shows, they've all, they're like little bit comedians are like little business owners, you know?
Mhm.
Not little, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
their
totally.
own, you know, entity.
Yeah.
It's like a bit, you know, it's a business, but you know, they've been through the trials and tribulations of striving for something.
Mhm.
And I just love talking about, you know, those journeys. So where did you start out? Like where did you grow up? Let's start with that.
I grew up in LA.
Okay.
So my parents, so my mom had immigrated to LA from Argentina, and then my dad, he grew up in Mexico, and then when he was 16, moved to Texas, went to undergrad and
Is
medical.
your dad so your dad's
My
Mexican?
dad's Mexican, yeah,
Okay. And your mom's from
and my
Argentina.
mom's from Argentina, yeah.
And you have blonde hair
Well,
and
so they're both
blue eyes.
Jewish, yeah. So they're both Jewish. So like both sides of my family
Yeah. Not to
were.
say that you can't.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
But
yeah, because it's an ethnicity, right? So it's
yeah.
like it's a melting pot in its own right. But my dad moved to Houston. His family moved to Houston when he was 16. He went to undergrad medical school there, and then moved to LA. And then my parents met in LA, and I was born and raised in LA.
Okay.
And then I went to college in Atlanta, and then came back to LA post college. And then I was doing stand up in LA. But I did growing up, like I loved performing. I loved writing. I studied English and creative writing in college, and then came back to LA. Was doing stand up, and then also wanted to get into screenwriting and filmmaking. Um, did a slew of different like assistant jobs, and
You're a poet as well,
and then
right? Yeah.
yeah. So I started off writing poetry when I was like 12, 13. I got into poetry, and then started performing poetry when I was like 16.
That's
Um,
cool.
and I definitely like contribute a lot of how I think as a comic today to the lessons I learned sort of as a poet when I was like a young teenager, because I think that allowed me to sort of be like very introspective
Mhm.
and also like ask a lot of questions. And I definitely think that was very beneficial in sort of the way that it set my brain up.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it's interesting. I think I was, I was doing stand up, and then probably like in like 2017 or something, I started like having some like success online, and then I was able to start doing some like one-nighters, but I definitely wasn't like ready to do that. And I knew that I wasn't, so I wasn't doing clubs. I was just renting out these little like 50 seaters
Mhm.
just to like start doing it so I could figure out what that felt like. And
Mhm.
um and but I think a turning point for me was sort of, during the pandemic. I really was thinking about like what what I was making, and where what I was making was coming from, and the intention behind it. And I think I there was definitely this feeling of, and it wasn't 100%, but there was definitely this feeling of like I am creating from a place of of thinking about what an audience might like, and not really creating
Mhm.
from a place of, well, what am I supposed to make? What do I have to offer,
Yeah.
right? In the realm of art, whatever that might be, that is that can be singular because only I have this thing to offer.
Right.
Because I think
Right.
like every artist has that, right? Um
But you do have to pay. Do you have to pay attention to both, though? I mean,
I think I feel like there are enough people out there, and especially now,
mhm.
right? Like I think you don't need you don't need that many people, right, to like dig what you do in
Yeah.
order to have a successful career doing the thing that you do, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, if you want to reach a certain level of success, right, and you want to scale to a certain point, I think probably more so. But even then, I think there's something to be said for just like, hey, listen, this is the type of stuff that I like. This is the type of stuff that gets me excited. This is just what I have to offer. And then just having faith that there are people out there that also will like this, and
Yeah.
they'll find it. And I think that's the hard part, right? Is like having the patience and the faith that like people will find it. Um and it's interesting. Like
And that takes courage in a way too, because if you're actually being true to what inspires
yeah,
you, what you love
yeah.
doing, and imagine if like you do that for a long enough period of time and people reject it,
right, which is very possible.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
totally.
that's the
But
whole
that is the ultimate, like, you have to be
yeah,
brave enough to be able to go, "You know what? I'm gonna like, I've got nothing to fall back on
yeah.
if 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 I do get if I ultimately nobody likes
Right, right.
that."
Which is like, but my thing is, you can also play the game of like trying to make something that people will like, and
Yeah,
there's also the chance that that's not going to work,
right.
right? And now you're
Totally.
just sitting there like, man, I just wasted all this time,
Yeah,
right? All of this creative energy trying to create something that people would like, and they don't like it. I might as
right.
well have just gone the other way, right?
Yeah.
And then the other side
No,
of it
being
is
true to I completely
yeah,
agree.
and
It makes sense.
the other side of it is like, okay, you play the game of trying to trying to create something in order that because you think people will like it, and that's the motivation,
Mhm.
and then people like it, and you have a lot of success, and sure, the success I'm sure is nice, but I also know because I've felt this is like there's something there where you go, this doesn't feel good for some reason.
Yeah.
There's still something I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm feeling some sort of disconnection from it all. None of the results or the success matter because there's something false here,
Right,
right?
right.
Versus I've found and I'm saying this from the standpoint of like I arguably was doing better, 6 years ago even than I may have in the last, year and a half,
Yeah.
right? Which on its face like can sound like a scary thing to say, but I'm very much okay with it because I feel like what I'm doing at my shows now is like I really love it and I feel
Yeah.
really good. So it's like I'll tell you a story. Last year I did a show in Orlando and I like rented out a theater, right? I don't know, I put up money for it
Yeah.
and I'd done it in the past and most of the time it works well, but sometimes it doesn't. And I put up the money, and I remember I was flying to Orlando, and I had sold like 8 tickets, right? And it was like a 140-person theater,
Oh
right?
my
That I had like rented out,
gosh.
and I sold like 8 tickets. And
So
by the
that's expensive
so
if you
yeah, luckily I had a show in Miami right afterwards, and
Okay,
like what
okay.
I made there ended up like I
It
kind of like
balanced
broke
out.
even and
Okay,
it
yeah.
balanced out. But still, I'm going across the country to perform for 7 people at this point.
Yeah.
Day of the show, it's like 14 people, right? And I remember I had rented it out. There was no like staff, so I'm taking people's tickets, and stuff. It's like, and I didn't get an opener because I was just like, I'll just put on a show,
Yeah.
And I went up there and I did like 70 or something, and I just remember I was at the hotel room and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go right now. And all the thoughts went through my head. What are these people that paid money to come see me gonna think? There's only like 13 people in this venue. It's empty. Who this
Mhm.
guy? What on my Friday night? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And I went, okay, well, I can't control what they're gonna think, but they're there and I'm there. So I
Yeah.
have a choice right now. I can either feel bad for myself, right? And like that's going to carry over into the show, and then
Mhm.
they're definitely going to feel that, and then that's not going
Yeah.
to be great. Or I can say, you know what? They're there. They paid money. Maybe some of them got babysitters. Who knows, right? Either way, they're there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that they're there. It's not as many people as I would like to be there, but they're
Right.
there,
Sure.
and they deserve the same show, and they deserve a show.
Yeah.
And I went up there, and I had so much fun. I mean, I had so much fun, and
Yeah.
we had a fun time that night. And I went afterwards and I was like, okay, well, like, yeah, from a on paper standpoint, total failure, right? But from a sort of like soul spiritual standpoint,
Yeah.
like there was something really beautiful that happened that night.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for those people that showed up. And I'm grateful for that night. I'm grateful for that resistance and I'm grateful for that challenge because now it's like, cool. Well, that happened and I survived. So I get a ticket count a few weeks out that ain't looking that great. All right. Well, guess what? We'll take it as it goes and we'll move on. And I remember I
Yeah.
saw it was like 2012 or 2013, something like that. And I remember I went to go see Don Rickles in Vegas,
Yeah.
right? And this was like post he had like a surgery, so he was doing most of the show like sitting down, and then at the end there's this moment where he does like this number, and he like gets himself to stand up, and he does the number, and I just meant like, oh, I mean, this guy's still doing it.
Yeah.
He just loves doing the thing, and I think what I've discovered, in the last year and a half is like rediscovering that joy from when I started, where like it's not about the ticket count, it's not about the followers, the views, the this, the that. It's like, oh, I'm just excited about this joke that I'm working on.
Yeah.
I'm excited about trying this new tag. I'm excited about, okay, what if I like close this way or like make the and I'm just excited about doing the thing. And yeah, sometimes it can be like there are moments that you feel discouraged or you feel, you doubt yourself. Um but then I take a step back and I go, yeah, but like, how much fun are you having when you finally get up on that stage, no matter who's there? You're having a lot of fun. And I'll take that all every day of the week. And we're sitting here today, and I don't know what the next year will bring. I don't know what the next 5 years will bring.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I'm excited about what I'm working on. And that is going to keep me going a lot longer than anything else. And enjoy that process
Mm-hmm.
along the way. And that's nice.
Man, I mean, two things you just said struck me. I mean, one, enjoying the process, loving, it's super important to have fun.
Hmm.
Don't take yourself too seriously. Enjoy yourself, have fun. I mean, so important. We can all get wrapped up in like so much of the struggle and and we forget to just, take a look around, enjoy, our senses and everything that's like right in front of us.
Yeah.
The other thing that you said about that night where you were performing to 8 people, that's just like I I love so much, and it actually reminds me of something that happened at home recently in my
Mm.
backyard playing basketball with my son. Uh, he was uh, he's trying to get a certain number of free throws in the basket in a row,
Uh-huh.
and he wanted to do 11 and like 11 in a row
Yeah, yeah,
free
yeah.
throws, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's go. And he got up to he after a while. It was taking a while, and he started to get. He had to have to start over if he missed. So he'd get to like 4, 5. And then he'd have to start over. But he kept going, and he got to 10,
Yeah.
and he missed. He did this like 4 times,
He got to
where
10 4 times.
and then
Okay.
missed on
Yeah.
the 10th, where like the pressure was on, and then it started to like make him panic a little bit,
Hmm.
where he was like, it was dark out, we were like, we have to go in, but I could see his struggle. I mean, he's 12, it's like, and as a dad, I'm like, oh shit, what do I do here?
Mm.
Like, I don't want him, it's not a big deal. I mean, we're out, I'm like, we can go in, but at the same time, it did feel like a big deal to me. It felt like, okay, this is a moment where like we can make something out of this moment. You can say, you know what? I'm glad this is this difficult. And I'm glad that I missed those because now it gives me this opportunity to keep going in the face of that, to do this, to enjoy this, to um uh to just persevere through it. And if he didn't have that resistance, the 8 people,
Yeah.
the sort of real challenge, because you can get up against that and go, I'm just gonna, sorry guys, thanks for coming, we didn't get enough people, have a good night. And you could have like, there's so many
Refunded their
things that you
money.
couldn't,
Yeah. All
yeah,
those
you
things.
could have
Yeah.
done. But man, when he hit that 11, we both just were like, yeah, and like we were high-fiving, and like it was such a powerful moment, that I was like, damn. And I walked away thinking like, he will never forget that. Like
Mm.
and I was so proud of it. I mean, it's such a silly little thing, it's like, but he didn't leave. He was clearly super hurt and frustrated, and like didn't know how he was going to get to that point, but he just kept going. He came up against it and choked like 4 times in a row at the last minute, and then just kept going until he got it. And I think that you can't, once you do that, it does something to your character that you can't ever take away,
Yes.
right?
Totally.
That you have
It's
that
baked into your DNA.
forever.
Yeah.
So he leaves going, you know what? I said I was going to get 11 in a row. It took way longer than I thought. I failed when it was important many times, and I could have walked away I mean, he was so frustrated, so angry and yelling, and it was then he just calmed himself down and kept going, and it was like, what you took away that's I don't it sounds like what you took away from that night, you know, you could have done so many things. Like you could have blamed people for, you know,
Yeah.
the situation, other people for you could have blamed the venue,
And I could have blamed myself.
you could have blamed yourself,
There's, yeah.
I didn't mean to over dramatize that, but
No, no.
those are I don't know, man.
I love that. By the way, I love that story. What really stood out to me there was you you as a father recognizing this moment, right, and being very
Yeah.
like thoughtful and intentional. And going back to earlier when you were talking about, you had mentioned this idea of improving and
Yeah.
and giving that to being able to experience that like as a kid and having those voices around you that sort
Yeah.
of uh, espouse that idea and preach that idea. I think I'll just say, I mean, I'm only hearing a couple stories, but it sounds like you as a father are very much doing that. And I think to do that requires introspection and then, intention that is, pointed outwards towards your children. And I think that's
Oh,
really beautiful.
oh, thanks,
Yeah,
man.
cool.
Well, no, I mean, all I know is that as I get older, it's like it just and as I look around our politics, like all the shit, it's like it it really is just like what makes most sense to me. And I'm not a religious person, but and I'm not like a goody two shoes, kind of thing. I like to have fun, and but it's like I feel like what's important is your values and your character, like ultimately like improving that,
Yeah.
and that all this stuff that we're doing, when we're striving and endeavoring to build something and create something, it's because we need to do that. Us endeavors, us like create, like we're doing those things so that we can learn about ourselves, so we can improve ourselves
Yeah.
somehow. And
I'll say, it's interesting. I think I used to really feel like there was a separation between like the things that I did, like, like we'll just say like the art that I created, right? And the relationships in my life or just like my life. Like these are two I do stand up and
mhm,
then I go live my life. And sometimes I live my life and I notice something and then that finds its way into my stand up. But I met my wife when I was 24 and, like 2 years into our relationship, she was like, you got to go to therapy because my anxiety had gotten really bad.
mhm,
And I remember, and I went to therapy looking back, like, because like that to me was like, it was an act of love for myself, but also an act of love for her and the people
mhm,
around me. Cause like, I want to get better so I can be better for the people that I love and for the people that love me. Um, but that that sort of that mindset of like how can I get better, right, and not get better so that I can you know get better results,
right,
but that so that I can sort of move through this world in a way that makes life a little less filled with suffering,
mhm,
right, for myself and those around me, and so that we can experience these moments of joy and bliss and happiness,
yeah,
so you can have that moment with your son,
yeah,
right? Like that's selling out MSG, that moment with your kid. If you're for your kid, it's like that's the whole world, and like
mhm,
that's what the game is all about. And
yeah,
but I think it's also being of the mind where like you're doing the work so that you could recognize those moments as they're happening, so that you could be there
yeah,
and revel in those in that sort of in the euphoria of that moment, which is
totally,
cool.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we just answered all of life's
We
life
figured we
like
figured
we
it all
figured
out.
it figured it out. Yeah, right. No, but it's just sort of like it's like you just got to go through it all. There are moments that like those moments. Hang on. I try to hang on, you try to hang on to them. Once you get it going, it's like you realize you go through all those ups and downs, build up the tools you can to manage your way through for those great, moments,
And then you have days that suck. Then you
Yeah.
have days you're sad, days you're frustrated, and all those things. And like that's all a part of it too.
Yeah.
So
So so you're married.
married, yeah.
When you were 24,
No,
did you
no.
say?
So we
Or
met when
you
we
met
were
you were 20,
24.
sorry.
So we got married last February.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Congratulations,
thanks,
man.
appreciate it. Yeah, it's the
Um,
best.
that's great. Are you guys planning on having kids or?
Plan on having kids, and yeah, I mean we do everything together. We were writing partners, so we write together,
Oh,
and
cool.
then she's an actress as well.
That's great.
University of Michigan theater grad.
Okay.
And what?
I said awesome.
Oh, awesome.
No,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, she'll actually. So the hour that I'm working on right now, so I'm gonna look to like stage that a bit, and then she'll be
Mhm.
directing that.
Oh, cool.
So we just kind of, yeah, we do everything together. And
So
it's great.
so she's
She's the
gonna
best.
direct your new hour?
She'll direct the new
That's
hour.
great.
Yeah. So she has, yeah, I mean, she has the a theater background, and
Mhm.
she's just she's unbelievable. She's so cool, but she's just this unbelievable artist and person. And a lot of the hour, it's an hour. The hour is about like my sort of relationship with the idea of love from when I
Mhm.
was a kid, through my teenage years, and then once I met her, and moving forward. So naturally, a lot of it has to do with like her as well. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's the best thing that ever happened to me,
That's
because I can't imagine uh, a life where I feel the way that I do every
yeah.
day, and I can like do the shit that I do every day without her there.
I mean, I think that's with a partner, man. That's the way to do it. Pete Holmes, who's played here a couple times.
Love Pete Holmes.
We love him. He's one of our favorites. Um, he um, he said like life is hard, find a buddy.
I love that.
So like has like a super happy marriage, and I think he and his wife like do a podcast together, and
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's like, super important that you've got a relationship where, you can depend on each other. And that maybe you I mean, I don't think partners have to work together,
No,
I
no,
don't
not
think that
necessarily.
always like
No.
works out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of us out there, my wife and I, we are so different in our work methods that like she would lose, total she's so efficient and effective and like so necessary because I don't get to the point quickly. I'm long-winded.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You could probably tell just from this conversation.
Oh.
But
No.
like, so we could, and she has totally different ways of approaching things.
Yeah.
So like we can't work together.
Yeah.
It's like we know we can with certain things, like raising our kids. We
Right.
know when it's like mom's gonna take care of this because she's super awesome and dependable, and dad's gonna take care of this because he's I don't even know what positive because he's the only other person here that but no, we still make a great team.
Mhm.
But we don't necessarily we can't work together
Right.
in terms of like we couldn't
But that's also
work.
valuable to like to know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
um what how old were you when you had your first kid?
I was
You were
29.
29. Okay.
Yeah, going on 30, and yeah, my wife's 8 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little bit of an
Amazing.
age gap there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, 29, 30.
29, 30.
I think that's. I mean, for me, that was a good. I mean, I was just. It actually it was one of the things that kind of initiated me starting the den.
Well, I was gonna say, because you said your oldest is 15 and the den's
Yeah.
been around for 14, so it was literally like you had a
Yeah.
kid and then you started this.
Exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, and that
Interesting.
was tough on our at home too
Yeah.
with my wife and our family because but it was like I was just at a point where I was like, okay, I'm almost 30.
Mhm.
Um, I've I've got, you know, if I don't do something, like I can't imagine having a family and, going to auditions, trying to be an actor, working at like restaurants, and I was working at like an apartment finding service,
Yeah.
and, making an unbelievably small amount of money a year, and it was just like I, I I have to do something. I got to make a bold move,
Yeah.
and I got to take a risk. So I took a big risk. I was like, I'm gonna make this happen. You
Mhm.
know, um, so it does go back to the sort of
Right.
like, I'm gonna do the whole like crazy, put myself through hell. How much can I take?
Right.
You know, um, and that does have repercussions. I mean, my wife was like, "Are you crazy? You're starting. We're just starting a family. You're starting a theater. Like a theater's not gonna. It doesn't make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then worse than that, I was going to use furniture stores, like I was saying, like furnishing this place,
Right.
swiping it on my credit card,
Wow.
and my wife would call me during the day. She's at home with my daughter, just born. She's like, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm at a used furniture store. I'm like getting some stuff for the new business. She's just like, oh my God, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was like 5 years of,
Of grinding,
yeah, it
I'm
was
sure.
5 years.
Yeah.
There were some years where it was so bad. I had to do anything and everything to survive. Like it was like there was one 6 month period where I, I, uh, and I don't want to romanticize this because I don't think this is the way for most people to
Mhm.
create a business or to start something. I don't. But I'll tell a little bit of the story if you're
Yeah,
interested.
of course. I totally am.
Just sort of like, um, yeah, there was a 6 month period where I woke up every day and the bills were so much, like to pay, make payroll. I'd have to my day started with going, okay, how much money do I need to come up with today?
Wow.
And a lot of times it was $5,000 or $10,000 by the end of the day that I did not have in the bank. The bank might be dipped into the negative, and fees are starting to accrue.
Wow.
Stuff's going through. I didn't have the cash flow to pay it, and that was how I began my day. And I just have to. It taught me to be really, really resourceful. It was not healthy stress wise, but it was like one day I was like, okay, how do I come up with $5,000 today? I need 5,000 will get me through the day. And I realized I had a light board that was worth $5,000. It was like an ETC element,
Mhm.
close to 5,000. I knew there was a theater company that just left here, and a few weeks before we had paid them out in ticket sales over 5,000 for the show that they did. So I knew the artistic director. I went to him. Um, Brian Rohde, I think was his name. Nothing Special Productions. Shout out. I don't know what happened to them, but they were a great company that rented from us for a while. And so I went to him and I was like, dude, I'm in a bind.
Yeah.
Uh, here's my light board, and I brought it to him. I was like, I need a check for 5,000. I'm gonna pay you back 6,000 in a week. So it was like those kind of moves I had to make because I couldn't risk him saying no. I had to be
Right.
like, I'm gonna give you this as collateral. So in the worst case scenario,
You have something.
you have this has got a
Right.
great amount of value. You might not be able to get 5,000. You'll get 4,200 or 4,500
Mhm.
for it. You'll be good.
Yeah.
I mean, you won't lose that bad. Your downside isn't huge.
Right.
Your upside in 1 week
It's 20%.
is $1,000. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, please take this deal. He was like, all right, Ryan. and he gave me $5,000, got me through that day. Next day, I was like, okay, what do I need to get today? And it went on and on like that for 6 months. And I just thought, just hang on until something happens. And, there was, it was like taking my car down to the pawn shop. I had a Honda Civic. I took my car down to the pawn shop and, said, here's my title. What can I get? I think I got, $4,000 or $5,000 for my title, but that one, that was those kinds of loans are insane.
The pawn
Like,
shop ones.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
insane. So it's like if you, I mean, it's like 100% or something. It's like you have to pay back like it's like you know, on that 4,000 that you're borrowing, you're
It's like
paying back
8.
like 8 or
Oh,
something.
wow.
Yeah, you're doing. And then I took on, I found these sketchy lenders at one point that it was like they pull from your cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So like there was one time I took on a lender. It was like they gave me 100 grand, but it was like they pull out of your cash flow like 800 a day. In over an 8 month period, you're paying back 150,000. So $50,000 you lose over the.
That's wild.
Yeah, so I did like
Oh, wow.
I did like one or two of those in smaller amounts over, and this is 10 years ago. But yeah, that was the level of like I'm not gonna
That's a
give
lot
up,
of stress.
I'm not gonna let go, and it was like just keep going, and hoping that the work that we're producing would somehow lead to this unknown step
Yeah.
that would enable
And what
things.
was the thing that sort of then broke you out of that cycle?
So, um, I mean, we always had a really good product. A lot of it was like we were paying staff that we have great staff, and I was always like paying more than made sense for the business
Mhm.
for my staff. But I knew that if, that gains reputation, so it was like this slow build of like reputation, more people come in, high quality theater. Um, that was another thing I would do. I'd go to theater companies and I'd say, you know, hey, you owe this much. If they were renting companies,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna cut your rent down massively. I just need it up front. So it'd be like, but again, it was always pushing it down
Right.
the road, right? So a couple big things that happened was that um, uh, because we maintained long enough this high quality work, business started increasing slowly. Like more and more people were coming into the building that would feed the bars more, and eventually I started tightening up systems, so I was making more profit. I was learning how to like make net profit on things.
You're winging all this.
You're
Because
totally
begin this,
winging.
you're an actor who's like, I want to
Never
get,
ran a
yeah.
bar, never, ran business. I mean, everything learned
Right.
from the ground up about how to actually make a profit. And it took it took till just recently to get into the green where it's like, and then it looks like if it keeps going, it's going to be very, very, very strong. But it's like still not, it's still hard to make money in this kind of business. Um, but yeah, it's taking opportunities when you see them. It's like the big names helped us, whether it was theater. It
Mhm.
was always like in theater, we were always working with like the really hot young theater companies early on, and
Yeah.
those names like, and that quality of theater, whether we were producing it ourselves, early on we were producing shows that were, winning Jeff Awards, which is like the Chicago big awards,
Okay.
like the Tony Award kind of
Yeah.
thing, So, um, those, but or we were working with theater companies that were like really producing high quality stuff. So the consistency of that and just keeping that going
Mhm.
was pretty vital because there were a couple key things that happened. One, Michael and Mona Heath, who came in and helped fund our big venue
The
downstairs.
Heath main stage. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Then it's named after the Heath. That was huge. But again, the way that's set up, they provided us financing to build that, but that financing was due to because they could see the high quality theater that we were producing. So like, I didn't know that would come along, but it's like that risk you take. It's
Right.
like if you just hang on long, it's something gonna come on. And then eventually I met my business partner, and she's now co-owner, Carol Cohen.
Yeah.
And she and I just see eye to eye on so many things. Like the whole comedy side of the thing, she's hilarious, and like, um, we love comedy, and theater. So she's a
Mhm.
theater person too. Her theater company is named Haven Theater Company. my daughter's name is Haven.
Oh,
So she started a theater company called Haven. So we just saw eye to eye. And she invested a significant amount of money into the business.
mhm.
And that was like the big move that was like, okay, I'm going to take on a co-owner here. That was in like maybe 2017, 16,
Okay,
17.
gotcha.
And that really helped. And I wouldn't have done that with just anybody, because again, you don't want to like sell ownership no matter how much money if it's not someone that's like, you know, really that you really work well with. Otherwise, it can be problematic, and your business can go down. So,
Right, that
but
makes
we
sense.
we see eye to eye on so many things, and it's been great so far.
That's
Lucky,
wow.
but
Would have
sorry to go on
no.
about
I
that
would have.
again.
I no, no.
I
That's super interesting. I would have never guessed that. I mean,
what
no, like
just
I mean, all of that you went through all of that, and
oh
that you were
yeah.
just like, I mean,
Yeah, the
that's
the
that's
pain, the pain. I could tell stories endlessly
mm,
about the pain. And because we were talking earlier about, do you, a question I always have is like, fuck, do you have to go through that to create something? Like, do you have to go through that kind of, like, for me,
yeah,
that's my question because I couldn't have, and I don't have the skill sets that a lot of people have. I don't have the education. I don't have a lot of other things that maybe some people have that
yeah,
like would enable them to plan better.
yeah,
Um, and slowly, be able to be able to get a vision into reality, bring something into being without, you know, that kind of difficulty.
right.
For most people, it's probably not worth that. The heart palpitations at night,
Uh huh.
the
Yeah.
anxiety, you know, all that comes with that.
It's
But
just I don't know. I feel like it's just like I don't know if you have to go through it, but I guess like whatever we go through is what we have to go through. So it's almost like that was
yeah,
the only road for you,
yeah, yeah,
given
totally.
everything that led up to the decision to start it and where you were and everything that came after it. It's like sure,
Yeah,
but if you had a different experience, then it's not you. It's another
yeah,
person in the same circumstances.
totally.
So, but then that person, do they end up here 14 years later with with this theater the way that it is? Probably not. Probably looks different.
Yeah,
And would you even want what that looks like? You know.
yeah,
So
yeah. There
it's
is
tough. But I'm
something.
sure when you were in it, you're like, okay, cool. If someone's like, okay, no, just like, hey, hold off for like a few more years, and then
Yeah,
this is where you'll end up. You're like, okay, man, that's cool, but this sucks right now.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure, like, yeah, it's tough.
yeah.
I can only imagine.
You do some crazy things when you're like, I just, now it's making me think of all the like crazy things that I did. I'm sorry to go off on this now. I do,
No,
like,
no, don't apologize. You're good.
I
Yeah.
remember, I remember being at a place where I needed some infusion of money, to help it, pay off all these things, the debts that I was accruing. And, I went to like, I remember looking up like the wealthy people in Chicago
Mm-hmm.
and like endlessly trying to call them up. And I'm a for-profit business, so it's not like I'm a nonprofit. And I just remember trying to get in touch with and getting in touch with some of these people and just trying to pitch them on, hey, I have this thing. It's really cool. And remember thinking like I'm trying to sell these people. It's an artistic place, but you can, there's all these artists there. They're creating there. It's a place where you want to hang out and talk about, the shows that you just saw afterwards. And there's multiple theaters and it's worthy of surviving. I'm going through a tough time. I literally got some of these people on the phone, or I left like these really long like letters for them I found out, their apartments.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
or there was this one, there's a couple, real, billionaires that we have in Chicago, and then I had like, left letters for them, and like I never got a response, from any of them. But I remember doing stuff like that was like the push for it. It's another
Yeah.
thing that made me think, like there's some things that happen which I find really interesting. Sometimes you push in a direction really hard
Mm-hmm.
and you don't get what you thought back, but you
Yeah.
get something else that you didn't expect. So it's like I would do stuff like that. And again, it was like questionable whether I should be spending my time like this. Like like a business class, if I was in a business class or somebody would advise me like, don't spend your time doing that. Like you're never going to get that. But and maybe and I didn't succeed with that. I was going after all these wealthy people,
Right.
showing up at their talks somewhere, hoping I'd meet them somewhere, afterwards, like to somehow pitch them, to, and I met with multiple people. I actually set up, now I'm thinking about it, like I actually set up a couple meetings with really, really wealthy people and never got anywhere with, they just didn't buy it,
Oh,
or they didn't care. It's just like, it's too small potatoes for them, and
right.
I get it. But like that push, like suddenly it was like out of the blue, something else, like Michael and Mona Heath calling me up out of the blue saying, "Hey, we've seen a bunch of shows at your place. We heard you're trying to, finish building all these theaters out.
Yeah.
We want to help you." Like I didn't go after them.
Right.
They didn't know that I was going after all these other people. They had heard that I was trying to expand the place, but they had seen enough here. So they came to me and it was
Mhm.
like magic. I can remember to this day when they called me up. It was like magical. It was like, "Wait, what? Are you serious? You want to help me finish building? Like I don't have to convince you?"
Right.
Like but it
That
was
must
like
have felt really nice.
all that energy going towards this, and
Yeah.
then it like came from somewhere direction that I wasn't
Expecting it.
expecting. Yeah.
Yeah. But all that, I think, but you don't do any of that unless you really believe in this and you really care and
Yeah.
you really, it's like, I mean, being an artist is kind of a wild thing to choose to do because
Yeah.
the odds are stacked against you. You need like the right dose of delusion, right? And sometimes the delusion depletes and you're like then magically something like gives you enough hope again to like kind of replenish that delusion so you can
Mhm.
keep forging on even though like it's not rational, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it makes you feel terrible and you're like I could
Mhm.
just not do this and then I don't have to feel this way. I can not
Right.
do this and then I don't have to deal with these problems. And yet like you keep going and that's that magic. But you keep and like I think the keeping going is magic within itself, and then you get that call, and that's
Mhm.
magic. But it's only because I think like, and this sounds like this might sound corny or whatever, but it's like you're putting magic out into the world by the very fact that you're forging on.
Yeah.
So you're like you're creating the
Yeah.
playground for it,
Yeah.
and hopefully it comes back.
One of my favorite quotes is from Goethe. Do you know Goethe? It's he was a German philosopher, I think in the
Okay.
1700s. And he said, boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. It's a little different from what you're talking about in that, you're saying like just forging on, has a sort of a magic, can
Hmm.
have a magic, and but it is sort of like bull moves have some kind of seem to have some kind of power in them,
Yeah.
in general. But any moves, like you get down to the core of like the drive. What is the drive of life? Like, what is that?
Right.
We're all imbued with something uh, underneath that is like, makes us continue to move forward. Uh, that we're built in with, and from that, things happen.
Yeah.
Sounds so corny, man, but
No, I
um,
mean, the most of the truest things sound corny, but it's only because
yeah,
people have been saying them forever.
yeah,
Um, I I commend you on through all of that, like keeping on, because I'm sure there were off ramps where you could have built off ramps for it along the way, where you could have gotten to the place you're like, okay, I have these debts, I can kind of make a plan where I can get out of this almost.
sure,
You could have, is what I'm saying, but
yeah,
you didn't,
yeah,
eh, despite circumstance. And I mean, the very act of survival is sort of feels bold,
hmm,
and within the context of that, to go to that quote.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when I think for better or worse, sometimes when you create something, you definitely uh you, you definitely love it. It's like, it's like a child, you
Mhm.
can't. It'd be very difficult to give something, this place is like, it's so weird. It's like it's almost like, there are certain, like, there are pieces of, my, even like my father in this building,
Oh,
that I feel like, or my family, it's just sort of like the values of, like, um are definitely, like, I feel like they're in the walls of it.
yeah.
It's like, because of the way that it had to be constructed, I had to use, I think I had to use every ounce of everything that I, you know, experienced in my life, that I was given through my,
Mhm.
my parents or whatever, like my how do I approach things when things get tough, that all those things, good or bad things, were necessary in bringing this to life. And
Right.
so it it feels like a thing that's not, it feels like a part of the fan, it
Yeah.
feels like, you can't just give it away that easily. You would have to give it away to something that felt right.
Uh-huh.
So now we are like, I'm getting emails of, like, hey, let's talk. We buy your business, and it's like, I would never even consider doing that unless it, you know, if unless it really felt like the right time or the right group of people or person, that
Yeah.
to hand it off, because it's more than just a money making. It's not about the money.
Right.
It's not about the fucking money. You kidding? It's not even close to about the money.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, yes, it's about the money, but because you need that to survive, but it's so much more than that.
It's love, man.
Yeah,
Right? It's like you
yeah,
were gonna have a kid and you were like, I love my wife and I know I'm gonna love this kid and I wanna make sure that, and that's I mean, it sounds like that's what set you off on this.
yeah,
I love my wife, I love this kid, I love theater, let me go build this thing.
yeah,
And that love propelled you forward through it all in the hardest times. And that love is baked into the walls of this place. So, at least tell
yeah.
me if I'm wrong, but that seems like that. Like that's sort of like the the connective tissue,
Maybe,
maybe.
yeah, I think so. I don't, I think so. It's just sort of like, it's everything.
Mhm.
It's all. I think the things that are good about it is definitely imbued in love and care, for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Like every. I mean, there's so many. Like, even there, there's some, Ron Wells, who, is the COO here. He's been here since 2010. He was an actor in Bus Stop, the first play
Oh
that we
wow.
we did, and he's been a stalwart. Just like,
Ron's
you
really
know,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
you've met
I met
Ron,
Ron. He's
and
great.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and he cares about this place. So it's like, then you have people like that, and there's others too, but that it's just like, it's all a part of this place.
Hmm.
So again, it feels like it's not, even when those people leave, um, they're still here.
Right.
They've left their mark.
Yeah.
They've been a part. They fit, and that's why they stayed.
Yeah.
They fit the qualities of the place, the character of the place, and then they added theirs to it. And like Shelley Crosby, who was our old general manager, she retired a few years ago, and we named the Crosby, the one of our theaters, after her. So
Hmm.
we have one small space called the Crosby. She's got a cool name.
This is a cool name.
Shelley Seagraves Crosby. Is where we would always use like a British accent when we said her name in full, but
Yeah.
she's cool. But anyway, I'm sorry to go on so much about that, but
No, don't apologize.
but
It's all
um
super interesting.
but yeah, yeah. Thanks for listening to that, man.
Of course.
So where do you think you're headed with comedy, in the next? What are some of the things I know you're doing a special, right? You got that
Well,
An hour? You're gonna
I
do an
have the hour,
hour?
so
Yeah,
yeah, so I'll
yeah,
figure out what the sort of road to making that happen will be. So
yeah.
what I'll probably do is do some sort of like a limited run of the show in like LA,
Mhm,
and then start there, see where it goes. So just sort of one step at a time, like stage it, put it up there,
mhm,
and see. And then I think I have like a few sort of like 10-minute sets that I'm gonna look to try to like tape and put out.
mhm.
And
Do
yeah,
those 10-minute sets, like, are they part of the
they're
hour? Are
not
they
part of the
broken out?
hour.
Okay,
So
so
they're
they're
just like
separate.
they're
They're, like,
separate. So they're just like
standalone?
standalone sort of. So that's what I was kind of doing. Like last year when I went out, I was just working on the hour.
Mhm,
And then this year what I did was I took the hour and I was like, okay, I feel like these jokes can kind of be taken out. And then I just started working on like the replacement jokes that I
mhm,
felt like I needed. Um, and then I just had like new jokes that weren't at all a part of that. And I've sort of been building that out. So in total, like, that's what this year has kind of been.
mhm.
And then I'll look to try to like put that out and see. Um, I don't know. I mean, my wife and I we're writing stuff and we're trying to make stuff happen on that front. But I think a lot of it is just focusing on, let me just keep working, let me keep
Mhm.
creating, let me put that out there and
Having a good time.
having a good time. And
Mhm,
then once it's out there, it's like I I believe in it. I have faith in it, and
mhm.
we'll just see what happens after that. I can't control it, and
Yeah,
I can't try to. And spending my time worrying about how it'll do post that point just feels
yeah,
like it won't help, and it'll only
yeah,
stifle me. So
right.
yeah. So we'll see. I mean, who knows? I don't know where I'll be.
Yeah.
I might. I don't know.
Well, hey, man,
That's the hoping for. Just I'm gonna keep writing jokes and I'll
yeah, you
keep
keep
performing them and
keep
put them out.
taking steps forward, you
Yes.
know? And I think like you said, it's a big world, right? Too. There are gonna be people like doing your thing. It's likely that people are gonna find you, and there's enough people if you're just true, not thinking about like, what can I do to appeal to
Yeah.
to the masses, You do your thing and you keep at it. I think like, you know, when you do stuff, I think another thing that makes magic happen somehow is when you, and this is weird, but like when you do stuff like, you know, play to a house that's, if you show up, 8 people are there,
Mhm.
you overcome that, have fun, do your best, work for them as hard as you can. There's so many things in there that I think make magic, so many qualities that make magic happen somehow, whether those returns, and I can't prove this. I don't I know this sounds a little out there, but it's like, and maybe there is no truth to this. That's all possible. But like, if you're using some qualities that, I don't know, the fucking gods respect.
Uh-huh.
Where it's like you have 8 people in front of you, and you're gonna do your best for them.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about yourself. That's honorable. It's
Mhm.
and people hate those words, but like I love that you're overcoming. The ease that it would be to be a victim in that moment. You're taking it
Right.
on yourself. You're saying, no, I rented this theater.
Yeah.
I put this show up. You're putting it on yourself,
Yeah.
and you're owning that, and you're sitting in your anxiety about it, and it's a little painful, but then you go, I'm gonna go jump in and do it, and you enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And those things, I think they pay off. So I think the universe or whatever it is respects it. Even if it doesn't, you respect it.
I think that's the thing, right? Is like at the end of the
You
day,
respect yourself.
I'm the only one that I have control over,
Yeah.
right? I can and it's the only thing I want to have control over.
Right.
Um and I think the more that you can live in that space and feel empowered by that, and sort of all the other noise kind of goes to the side, then I think it also just all of a sudden all that noise is distraction. And
Mhm.
now you have so much more bandwidth and so much more room to create. And then
Mhm.
I think like that's where That's where the stuff happens.
Yeah.
And again, there's this Ethan Hawke. I saw a TikTok, and he's either doing like a Q&A or an interview or something, I forget. But he talks about when he's talking to actors, he goes like, I want you to imagine you're 68 years old or something, and you're teaching theater at a high school in Seattle. And he goes, now if that terrifies you, quit acting. Right? And I think that's just
Yeah.
that to me sort of sums it all up. It's like we
Yeah.
have no guarantees on how
Right.
successful we're going to be, on how this is all going to play out.
Right.
It's like you act because you love to act, right?
Right.
If you're acting, it's like there's so many easier ways to like make money, or
Yeah.
to like all these other things that you may be trying to acquire through creating art. Like there are better ways and easier ways to get there, less painful ways potentially, like emotionally. But like you do it because you love it, and it's like I love stand up. I love doing
Yeah.
comedy. I love the feeling of telling a joke for the first time. I love, adding on a new tag, and that like takes it up a notch, or like, oh yeah, I did this little
Yeah.
face, and like that did like
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And it's like I can
Yeah.
just live there, then I can keep going forever, right? And then I can
Yeah.
and then I'll be 73 or I'll be 83, whatever, where I'll be Rickles near the end, right? And maybe I didn't have the success that Rickles had, right? But
Right.
I have the love for the game that Rickles had,
Yeah.
right? Or or whoever, and like that
And you were
I
kind
think
of
matters.
and you were true to yourself along the way.
Yeah,
And I think that's important. Nobody can be perfect in that.
right.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think you can. We all make mistakes. We all maybe sell out in a certain way
Right.
that you had a lot of pressure. You're like, I'm gonna do, create something that I think people want to see, and it's not really what you wanted to do,
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I think in the end, if you can get back to that,
And
it's
then
better
you
for
lived your
everybody.
life.
Yeah,
And then you're like, then you dead.
yeah.
And then
And then you don't take so you shouldn't take yourself too seriously.
and then it all, and then like your great grandkids don't even know your name,
That's
Isn't that the thing? It's like, I
totally
don't know my
true.
it's like,
I
who's your great
know.
great
I know.
grandfather? That's
I
yours.
know.
That's, yeah.
I know, man.
So we keep going on and trying our best. And then just try to be kind and good along the way, I feel like.
Yeah,
Just
it's
do
the
our best.
best. It's the best you can do.
Yeah.
But it is fun, and I think that's like, it's like we can have these conversations, and they're, and it's like, what's the point of all of this? Well, it's been fun. It's been a fun conversation, man.
Exactly. This was it. This was what a lovely way to like spend the
Uh,
afternoon.
And we can, we can, use, lose our train of thought, and use the wrong phrase, oxytocin, but we actually got it
that
right.
was right. You were
That
right.
was right. That
You
was
nailed
right.
that one.
Yeah. The butterfly, call something
What was the one before? Oh, cortisol. We got
the
cortisol.
cortisol. Yeah, we got that
Yeah,
one too.
that was.
So
And by the way, magic.
yeah,
Because
magic.
where did
man.
that come from? I don't. That just.
That
Really just.
came out, and that
just
was
popped
somewhere in the back of your brain. You'd heard that.
Yeah.
It was, somehow. But good job, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, man. This was fun.
Dude, thank you for coming. Hope to see you back at the Den performing soon.
Love.
Maybe you'll do your hour here next year.
That would be awesome.
And hopefully we'll sit down and talk again.
Sounds great.
Thanks,
you so
Daniel.
much, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Oh,
You all right?
that was great.
Good job. Yeah, that was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So sorry. I have to pee.
Go pee, man.
Please let me. I will be back.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could have totally.